Well, if you've been keeping up with your right angles, you know that we've done several stories by now talking about the fact that at this point in the campaign year, Joe Biden is leading Donald Trump by over 9,000 points, according to the New York Times. And so we have some interesting news that might come as a bit of a shock for some of those people. Rasmussen, who, unlike other pollsters, for some reason manages to generally get things right, decided to do a survey recently and compared the catastrophe of the Donald Trump presidency to the golden years of Barack Obama that everyone pines for and looks back for with such unmitigated glee, and which will be Joe Biden's undoubted campaign strategy throughout the fall. On August 3rd of 2012, Barack Obama had an enviable approval rating of 44%, but Donald Trump's failed presidency on August 3rd of 2020 is only 51%. Wait a minute. Allow me to get my calculator out here. Just 1 second, please bear with.
Math is hard.
That's a higher number.
Wait, like still?
51 is a bigger number than 44.
Did you
Scott,
check your work?
how can this be plus or minus 3 points, likely voters? Didn't we hear, you were telling us earlier story about Scott, didn't you, that Trump isn't going to have enough time to recover from his 7-point lead over Obama at this point in his presidency?
Well, yeah, and the barrage of news stories in recent days have all been about, when it comes to polling, have been about how difficult things are going for Donald Trump, both on a national basis and anytime they find a statewide poll, you'll see Pennsylvania's slipping or Minnesota is tilting or whatever. They're constantly emphasizing that. And every one of those stories, if you read into them, you will find that the people polled were registered voters. Now, anybody who's ever been connected with any political campaign in even the slightest way knows that political parties rank registered voters in a categories 1 through 4. And that has to do with how many times a person has voted in the last 4 elections. And so a 1 means that with mid-year and presidential elections, that person has only voted once in the last 4 years. But a 4 voter is out of 4 elections, that person voted 4 times. It's the people who are likely to show up, the 3 and 4s mostly, who are the ones that give you the best indicator. Now, there's every election cycle that comes around. There are people usually on the left who indicate that this time, people who never voted for anybody ever are going to show up and vote because the stakes are too high. Well, the only time we've really seen that play out in any significant numbers has been in 2016, and they didn't come out for Hillary Clinton. There were a lot of people who didn't typically vote, as Bill likes to call them, the unlikely voters who showed up. But perennially, if you look at every election cycle, you'll find that it was the predictions based on likely voters that hewed most closely to the final result, which means, therefore, that you should ignore any poll that is just of registered voters. The main purpose of the parties in this final stretch before the election, including the pre-balloting that happens by mail in a lot of states, or the election where you're actually allowed to go to a polling place before the specific day of election, the only people that really matter are the people who show up, and the only things that the parties are doing right now is really trying to make sure that their people who usually show up get there.
Steve, it's the math works out this way. If the Democrats don't get 85%, 90% of the black vote, they never win a national election again. Now, Donald Trump pulled either 12 or 16%. I think it was 12% of the black vote in 2016. But because of the catastrophe of his presidency, Steve, those numbers have fallen from 16% to 40% of the black vote.
Whoa, hang on. I'm going to need my calculator here, Bill, because I think the second one's the bigger number.
No, that can't be right, because if that were true, that would mean Donald Trump is significantly ahead in this race, and we've heard everything. No, they were 16% in 2016, yeah. and in 2020 they've fallen to 40%.
No, I think the 40 is bigger than 16. I think it's more. I think, yeah, because 14 minus 16 is like 30.
Yeah.
And 30 is still bigger than 16. So therefore, I'm doing Democrat math here. Help me.
Here's where you're running into problems,
Okay.
Steve. The reason that Donald Trump got 12% of the black vote in 2016 was because we just gotten over Barack Obama. But now that Barack Obama is not on the ticket and will be replaced by this nonconformity of a vapor named Joe Biden, since there is no black candidate on the ballot for the Democrats, that means that Joe Biden will pull a much larger percent of the vote than Barack Obama. Did you see how it works?
Yeah, no.
No.
I said this in between segments. I'll say it again for our actual viewers here. Joe Biden is exactly the kind of ambitious mediocrity that Ayn Rand warned us about in Atlas Shrugged. Just awful, just the worst. There's no deal he won't scrape together if it means 4 more minutes of power or $4 more million for his retarded son. It's just awful that there is so much power concentrated in Washington that somebody like Joe Biden, you called him a vapor of a nonentity, I think, could be this,
yeah, something like that.
Could scrape this close to holding that much power. It just gives me chills thinking about it. It's disgusting. Listen, Joe Biden is unofficially running for Barack Obama's 3rd term. We all know that. He's, kind of the warm, good old days when Obama was creating the racial division and whatnot. And what we've seen here these last 2 months with the peaceful protests that very quickly turned into communist riots in so many of our major cities. What we're actually
mostly peaceful riots.
Yeah, mostly peaceful. Yeah. Here's something that needs to be said. Mostly peaceful means partly violent. And I think we all learned in civics classes that partly violent is an okay portion of political discourse, just as long as it isn't greater than 49%. Isn't that what we all learned in civics class when we were kids? The partly violent is good and necessary? No?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Anyway, so what we've seen these last 2 months is a preview of Joe Biden's 1st term, which will last maybe 6 weeks before he dies or resigns or gets 25th Amendment out of office and his super progressive lady of color vice president becomes the president. So what we're seeing here is a preview of how Joe Biden would govern because, well, this is what he said. He's taken the side of the partly violent rioters and all the rest. So we're getting a pretty good indication of what a Joe Biden presidency would look like. And you mentioned how Trump is doing with black voters, and this just warms my heart because when I was putting together my segment, my regular segment for this week, we were talking a lot about Minneapolis, but there's a part I left out. A community organizer in Minneapolis, a guy named Steve something. I wish I could remember his last name. They didn't say he was a black guy, but I was guessing from the story in the part of town they said he was in that he's a black guy and a community organizer who is begging for more police in his part of Minneapolis, just begging for it through this community organization of his. And voters like this, maybe they'll vote for Trump, maybe not. But do you think they're going to vote for the Democrat who has said that he's everything but in favor of defunding the police?
Scott was talking earlier. What was it, Scott? 700,000? One of you two guys.
Police, yeah.
Police union, which normally would go solidly for Biden, historically would go for Biden, and the Democrats has gone for Trump, and it was 70,000 votes. That's a tenth of that. Let's get my calculator right here. That basically 70,000 strategically placed votes are what made Donald Trump president in 2016. So despite the fact that the New York Times is constantly saying it's pretty much over for Donald Trump and probably Republicans should just go home and not even think about voting because the lead is insurmountable at this point that Joe Biden has. There's a couple things on the table here that I think are interesting. Number one, Americans apparently are not terribly fond of watching their cities burn to the ground and having the candidate of a major party saying, I'm in favor of bailing out the people who set fire to the building that you used to shop in. In fact, I made a donation to that cause. I don't think people like the idea that there's no police force. And I think the people who like the idea of having a good police force the most are black voters because they're the ones who don't afford private security and they're the ones who live in the high crime areas. Despite what the Democratic politicians will tell you, law and order matters most in areas where the crime rate is the highest. And pulling back the police hurts black communities more than anyone. Rudy Giuliani, through enforcing the law, saved more black lives than anybody in modern American history. And that's just a fact. So there's all of that. But regarding the black vote, with Barack Obama and Biden and so on, the one thing I've noticed, and I've noticed this, it fills me with admiration every time, is that virtually any honest Black American voter, Democrat or Republican, will tell you that the one thing that they really just despise the most is condescension. They have an exceedingly well-tuned ear for that. I think most people don't like being condescended to, but if you've been condescended to as part of the political history of your entire life, then that's kind of a problem. Greatest example I ever saw this with my own eyes was when I was editor on a show called Sunday Morning Shootout, which is a movie talk show on AMC. And Lawrence Fishburne was on there, as I recall. And they said, this was in 2007, just as Obama was starting to pick up steam. They said, as a Black American, what do you think about Barack Obama? And he said, can I answer just as an American? And that's
love that.
That's the entire issue right there. I hear it all the time. So the reason Donald Trump is pulling 40% of the black vote, and the campaign hasn't even really started yet. What they like about Donald Trump, it may not be his policies, although he did provide record employment levels and record improvement for Black communities before the COVID-19 thing hit.
Sentencing
The thing I like about Donald Trump is that Donald Trump is a plain speaker. He speaks the truth. He does not condescend to people. You have a lot of things you might not like about Donald Trump, but his ability to simply use words to slowly massage away whatever he might mean is not one of them. And people who have been condescended to their entire lives like somebody who tells it like it is. And I think it's going to be really quite remarkable. The author of the story, conservative author who said, that Trump is pulling 40 and that won't last the election. We might be able to see 15, 20%, and that might be enough for him to win. I disagree. I think Trump's going to get a minimum of 40% of the black vote in 2020. And I think he's going to do it because he's going to come out and basically say, he's going to speak the truth in a way that Mitt Romney was incapable of speaking the truth to Black Americans, in the way that McCain, and we go all the way back, this kind of kid glove kind of thing, No. Donald Trump says what's on his mind. And it's not a question of whether that appeals to Black people so much as he's not condescending to them. He's not putting on the Southern accent like Hillary Clinton did when she would speak at Black rallies, or talk about the bottle of hot sauce that she keeps in her purse all the time, and all the rest of this transparent, pandering, lying condescension. I think it's going to be a big deal. If the black vote holds at anything like those kind of numbers, then it's essentially over. And if this is where his approval rating is relative to Obama, up by 7 points in August of the election year, I think things are looking good. But I think the one thing we have to remember are the words of that great philosopher, and really the foundation in many ways of Western thought, when Han Solo said, don't get cocky, kid. This is the foundation upon which we build our civilization. Don't get cocky, kid. But the next time you hear that Biden's up by 9,000 points, he's not. He's not. That'll do it for this edition of Right Angle, made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. We say this at the end of every show, at the end of every week, but think about it. There are a few people who are paying for you to see this content, and if you're not paying for them and haven't paid for them for years, wouldn't you feel better if you were part of the team instead of part of the people that are riding on the team? Just a thought. Go on over to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. Scotty's got it all set up, and if you don't like what you get for your membership, we will cheerfully refund your money. Somebody will cheerfully refund your money. It won't be me. I'll be cursing, but nevertheless, you will get your money back in a very prompt fashion. For Steve and Scott, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next week right here on Right Angle.